Now that we understand how cookies work, and we understand the pros and the cons of using cookies, and we see how cookie data can actually be lost or manipulated, we might want to look for something that's a little more robust. Especially if we're going to be working with a web application, cookies may not be the best for us. And in truth, you're going to want to use a combination of cookies and sessions as you're working. For some things, it's going to be very useful to just put a cookie down, because a cookie is going to stay perhaps for longer than a session will. And other times, you're going to want to use your session because you can trust your session a lot more than your cookie. Now, a session is a file that's stored on the web server. And in that file, you can store whatever information you want. So you can store a lot more information in there than you can store in a cookie. And that's one of the advantages. The way we find out which file belongs to which user is by using a cookie. So we set a special session cookie on their browser, and then we look to that cookie to find the place where the file resides on our server, and then we can look inside that file to find the information stored in the session. The information is not there for them to see or for them to edit. All they can do is change the ID number, which references the file. And the ID number is going to be very long and complicated to help make sure that we don't end up with users hijacking the sessions of another user. So in order to use a session, we're going to have to first create this file and set the cookie on the user's machine. Or, if we've already done that, we're going to need to find that cookie and then find the corresponding file on the machine. So we'll need to do that with something called session start. And that's a very simple function that we can call, and I'm going to show that to you. But before I do, I want to mention one very important key feature about session start, and that's that it needs to happen at the very, very beginning of your file. Before you output any HTML or any white space at all, we're going to need to put in our session start. So let's try that now. I'm going to do a save as on my cookies file, and we're going to just do sessions.php and store it in my PHP sandbox, and we'll call the title of this file sessions. Now I'm going to remove everything that's in there, and I want to issue this session start command. Now I've been putting all of my PHP here in the body, but this is the one time we've actually got to go above the HTML and make sure that we do it before we even output any HTML. So up here, I'm going to put in session underscore start with parentheses around it and a semicolon. And that one command is going to say, okay, PHP, go to their browser, get the ID number for this session cookie, come back, find the file, and open it up so we can use it. And if you went and you didn't find that ID, or if you went and you didn't find that session file, then start a new one and send them the appropriate cookie and everything that we need so that we're ready to start with this session. So it just gets everything sorted out so we can use sessions. Again, the key feature here, and I cannot stress this enough, is that session start has to come before we've sent any information to the user's browser. Because once we've sent HTML, head, title, then it's too late. Then we can no longer start a session. We can no longer do that talking to the browser about their cookies that we need to do to get sessions started. We'll have already started outputting HTML, and their browser will refuse to do any kind of sorting out of the cookies in the sessions. Go ahead and try this now. This doesn't actually do anything except start the session. We're not going to do anything in the session right now. Just save the file and load it up in your browser as sessions.php. Now that started a session. Now it didn't actually do anything, as I said, but we can actually see that if we go into our preferences and we look at our cookies just like we did before. We'll scroll down till we get to localhost, and here we are, localhost, and I have something called PHP SESSID, and the name of that cookie is actually configurable in php.ini if we wanted to configure that, and the content of that cookie is A161J6KJ, so on. So that's the ID field that it's going to use to match up with a file on our server. Now, certainly someone can come in and try and edit that and fish around till they find something that's a session. That's a sufficiently long and complicated enough string with enough variations in it that it would take a really long time for someone to find another file on our system, another session, that corresponded if they were to just hunt around and try different ones. Now, obviously, if we're going to build some kind of industrial strength site, it's going to have millions of users, then we might want to start looking at other security options. But for our purposes, that's going to ensure that we are referencing a unique file. Now, the contents of that file right now don't have anything in them, but we can put things in there and pull things out by referring to sessions in the same way that we referred to the superglobals get, post, and cookie. We'll just do PHP, and then we can just simply say session, and we'll give the session name equals, and I'll go ahead and give it my name, Kevin. So that will then put that in the session file. That's all there is to it. Let's go ahead and do another block of PHP down here that's actually going to do the reading back in. And we're going to reference it the exact same way. We're going to say name equals, and we're just going to cut and paste this for simplicity, semicolon, and then we're going to echo back name. So the only way that it's going to know about name is if it makes it successfully from Kevin to session name, from session name back to the variable name, and then gets echoed out. Let's try loading up that page. And sure enough, it works. So that's how we can set values in the session and pull them out again. And we can set lots of values in there. Let's say we actually have another one. We'll make this one first name, and this one will be last name. And then we can set name equal to first name, and we'll concatenate it with a space and a period, and then let's grab this variable from here so we don't have to retype it. I'll just expand my window a little bit. Nope, a little further. There we go. And then it comes back, I have Kevin both times. Let's make my last name in there. There we go. So you see now what the power of sessions are. We can store that information on our server and not on the user's machine. If we were to go back in and look at those cookies again, we would still just see that same ID file there. We would not see any of this information. That's stored on our machine where we can feel good about knowing that we're the only ones who have access to it. So that's all there is to working with sessions. Now, we've talked a lot about the benefits of working with sessions, but there is a downside, which of course we've just created a file on our server. And that file is a very small file because all it contains in it is first name Kevin, last name Skoglund. But over time, that file could become larger. We could put very large amounts of data into it as we have a bigger application, and we could end up with hundreds or thousands of files. So we'll want to also think about cleaning up those files from time to time. And there are some strategies on server administration to help you to do that. As long as we're learning to develop PHP, I'm not going to focus on that. If you start deploying something as an industrial strength application out there in the real world, you're going to want to consider doing some session cleanup from time to time and wiping out sessions that haven't been used for a certain amount of time. Now, of course, once you do that, you'll be expiring your user data as well, but that's okay. Sessions will handle that gracefully and say, oh, I went to look for that file and it wasn't there, and it'll just create a new session for the user. So that's the pros and cons of using cookies and sessions. If you're interested, there are some other super globals that you could look at on the php.net website. Server is one, host is another, and that'll give you information about what server you're running on or what host is making a request, what IP address that someone's coming from. I'm not going to go into those now because I think those are more advanced features, and we're going to stick to just these essentials that are going to help us to get a dynamic website built. Let's move on to the next subject, which is going to be how to set headers in what we return to the user's browser, as well as redirect their pages to other pages. And we'll see how to do that in the next movie.